Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's video. I'm just going to take us pretty much to the end of March and even into the start of April with the extended GFS and also the ECM ensemble. So have a look at the end of the video. CFS V2 for the next month as we usually do. We're going to begin by bringing up to date with the latest developments in terms of the stratosphere over the North Pole. Before I get on back to say I've had a very busy morning, so I've not been able to do the ECMWF 30-day look ahead for the UK and for Europe too. That will be back next Tuesday. Just having a week off because I haven't got time to fit 2 videos in today. Right, so we're going to begin by having a look at what's going on in the stratosphere over the North Pole. So it had a very, 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 very cold temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole, really since the beginning of February. So this is from the JMA, and the grey line is depicting the trend in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA for this point in the year. The black line shows how temperatures have been performing through this season. So back around Christmas and New Year, we have the southern stratospheric warming. That's where that black line shoots up to something like 50 or 60 degrees. In just a few days. Then after Christmas we have a very slow drop in the temperature. We sort of reach parity with the grey line, with the trend line, sometime through the middle of January. And since then, we've been colder than average. And over the past sort of 4 to 6 weeks, very, very cold temperatures at 10 HPA indeed. Hovering around between minus 70 and minus 80 degrees. And at this point in the year, we should be somewhere around minus 50. So almost record-breakingly cold in terms of those temperatures at 10 HPA. Now, we are still very cold. We're still way below where we should be at this point in the year. But you can see that the black line is starting to tick up now. So I think we reached our lowest point of the season around there. That was minus 80. And since then, we're somewhere around minus 75, something like that. And I think this is going to lift up over the rest of March and into the beginning of April. We'll see this black line returning back to something closer to what you'd expect to see in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA. Looks like at 30 HPA, so going lower down towards the troposphere, but still within the stratospheric level. It looks like also there the temperature has bottomed out at its lowest, going to around minus 75. And now we're just starting to see that black line beginning to tick up ever so slightly. It's still very cold. It's still way below the grey line. It's still much, much colder than average, but it does look as though that that temperature is now starting to stage something of a recovery. This is how temperatures are being forecast to go over the next couple of weeks by the GFS model. This is at meteosil.fr. So where we've got these blue colours, that's the cold temperatures at 10 HPA. Still around minus 75, minus 76, something like that. Let's see how things develop over the next few days. So we keep very cold temperatures going until the weekend, and then we start to move close towards minus 70, and then we go through into next week. We're hovering around minus 70, maybe going to sort of like minus 65 to minus 70 as we get through towards the middle part of next week. Let's go to there. And we carry on, and we can see that eventually we start getting these blue colours being really, really stretched, put under a lot of strain. So eventually we finish up there. This is the 4th of April, so it's a long way out, but eventually we are seeing definite signs of the polar vortex weakening a lot at its roots in the stratosphere, being stretched, and it looks as though the final end of the polar vortex for this season is on the way as we get through to early April. Temperatures by then over North Pole have risen to somewhere around minus sort of 55 to minus 50, something like that. And on this scale, that would take, there's April just there, of course, so on this scale, that would take us back to around here. So by the beginning of April, we should be around average. We should be in this sort of ballpark, just there, somewhere around sort of minus 50 or minus 65 to minus 50. So by the beginning of April, we should see those temperatures in the stratosphere coming back up towards where you'd expect them to be in the middle of spring after being so very, very cold just recently. And as this happens, we will see rapid weakening of the zonal winds, of course. So they've had, with this really cold temperature at 10 HPA in the stratosphere, we have very, very strong zonal winds. And we've still got very strong zonal winds indeed. That's where the zonal winds are right now, way above average. Again, the black line, this is from weatheriscool.com, by the way. The black line sort of shows the trend. So we're in a weakening point of the year now. The zonal winds should be weakening as the polar vortex weakens, and eventually we finish up without a polar vortex for a little while anyway, through the middle of the summer, and with a reversal of the zonal winds, very weak zonal winds always in the summer. So where we are right now with the zonal winds is just here. So they're already beginning to weaken. That was the peak of the zonal winds, coinciding with the coldest temperatures at 10 HPA. We're weakening the zonal winds, but they're still very strong, still much stronger than average. But the green lines indicating the GFS and its ensembles, and you can see that the green line is downhill all the way, really. So by around 384 hours away, so in a couple of weeks' time, we're just there. Still a little bit stronger than average, actually, if the forecast is right. But rapidly weakening, and we would expect, if we could go on another week or so, we would probably see the zonal winds then returning to average. That's certainly what the CFS V2 members are doing. That's indicated by, or they are indicated by, the 3 pink and 1 blue line. They're all sort of reaching parity with where you'd expect to be as we go through into April and May. So expect a rapid weakening of the zonal winds after being very, very strong as we go through to the end of March and the beginning of April, returning to trend. Now, what effects this has on the troposphere will be quite interesting because, of course, had a very strong zonal wind and also cold temperatures at 10 HPA. And we're just going to wait and see, I think, what effects this has as we see this rapid deceleration, if you like, of the zonal winds and the polar vortex. It may be that we start to see a bit more of a blocking signal occurring as we go through April and in towards May, but we'll have to wait and see on that. It will be interesting to see exactly what effects this does have on the troposphere, swinging kind of like from one extreme to another, and doing so quite shortly. This is a very interesting animation that I saw from James Warner at Metman James on Twitter. I saw this yesterday. So this is showing the decrease of the polar vortex in terms of the zonal winds at 10 HPA. And it's based on yesterday's GFS run. So we're starting here on the 18th of March. You can see the cold temperatures that we've got at 10 HPA. And, of course, that coinciding with the strength of the zonal winds as well. So if I run you through, you can see James Warner was tweeting, and they're gradually phase the polar vortex until next autumn. So if I run you through the animation, just watch how those blue colours kind of like fade away, begin to disappear as the zonal winds decrease and the temperature comes up at 10 HPA. So you can see very clearly the weakening that's going on of the polar vortex there. I'll leave the link to James Warner's Twitter in the description at Gaz, where we just give him a follow. And you can just see how the polar vortex is kind of like on its way out as we run through. There's the dates, of course. That's like the 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st, 1st of April through to the 3rd of April. And you can see how those blue colours depicting the polar vortex and the zonal winds are weakening very rapidly, very rapid deceleration of the zonal flow at 10 HPA. And as I said, we've got to wait and see just what effects this is going to have on the atmosphere, because it's been very, very cold in that part of the stratosphere over the North Pole for quite a long time now, going back to the beginning of February. It's coinciding with a very strong zone of winds, and now it's very quickly going to see this fading out. So there may be a little bit more of a tropospheric response than you would normally get when we get this it's normally a gradual process starting around February, just gradually weakening the zone of winds and the polar vortex. But because it's going to happen so rapidly and from a very, very cold stratospheric temperature and from a very strong zone of wind, because this change is going to happen so rapidly, we might get a little bit more of a tropospheric response than normal. And that may mean some sort of northern blocking appearing in the troposphere through April or possibly into May. So we just have to wait and see, but it's going to be interesting to observe this and see what does happen, because we have had near record-breaking or actual record-breaking cold temperatures for the time of year at 10 HPA in the North Pole, and also in terms of the strength of the zone of winds for this point in the year. So it will be really, really interesting to observe this and see what happens as we get further on once this rapid deacceleration has taken place. Right, GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles. Looking at Ballymena in Northern Ireland today, another suggested place for our list of suggested locations for this section of the video. We've got plenty now to go for the next week or two, so big thank you to all of you for suggesting your locations. If you'd like to have your location featured, we can certainly add you to the list. So we can't go down to village level yet, but certainly can show your local town or city. So do let us know where you'd like to see. Right, so this is where we're starting off at. Much milder than average over the next 2 or 3 days. Temperatures are going to be way above average, both in terms of the upper air temperatures and the surface temperatures. Over the weekend, we get a bit of a cool down taking place for a couple of days, probably in the north starting Friday, in the south more likely not really seeing that until Sunday, but eventually we will turn a little bit cooler over the weekend into start of next week, but then temperatures lifting up again through the course of next week, going much milder than average before the beginning of April is possibly just showing a bit of a cooling trend now. So I did a video yesterday talking about the chance of a change in the weather pattern in early April. A change to what, we're unsure, but possibly something a bit cooler, a little bit more unsettled maybe. As far as precipitation is concerned, now remember this is for Northern Ireland, so going to be very exposed to the Atlantic, so it'll be much more unsettled ensemble than if we're talking somewhere like London. But nevertheless, we do see there's a fair amount of dry weather coming up until the weekend. Then we get some rain over the weekend associated with that drop in temperature. Now for the south and east, that rain won't come to very much at all over the weekend. So the south and east will be mainly dry at the weekend, but the rain will affect the northwest. Then a lot of next week is looking pretty dry until we get through to the very end of March or the beginning of April. I mean, it's starting to go rather more unsettled once again. But that's a pretty dry ensemble for what, again, is very exposed to the Atlantic, of course. So for that part of the world, although there are more precipitation spikes than you will get if you're looking at somewhere like Birmingham or London, for that part of the world, that is a pretty dry ensemble. Temperature anomalies for the 19th to the 27th of March, generally coming out above average, so a milder or warmer than average week ahead. Precipitation anomalies are looking like this, so much drier than average in most parts of the country, going to be mild and dry in the week ahead. That's how the GFS operational run is looking. We're starting on Friday, so we're bringing up a mild or maybe even quite warm southwesterly wind, but there is that cold front that's bringing rain into the northwest, so that's the precipitation spikes that we had for Northern Ireland, of course. That rain heading into the northwest on Friday on a cold front. It takes a long time to get down to south on Saturday, and we're actually still under a ridge of high pressure, so that front will weaken a lot. Eventually, the high pressure pulls out to our west, so we do bring down some cooler air from the north, but we're still under high pressure. It's going to be a lot of dry weather, especially in the south and east over the weekend. And then next week, high pressure is sort of re-establishing itself again across the country. Now, you notice these cold northerly winds plunging southwards through Scandinavia and much of eastern and central Europe. That's bringing a real cold blast to much of northern Europe. We're on the periphery of that, we're just on the edges, but it looks as though this high pressure will keep that cold air at bay, mainly over Scandinavia and northern and central Europe. But of course, we do need to keep a close eye on it because we're not all that far away from it. If we just back this high pressure a bit further west, say centric to the west of Ireland, then we might start to tap into those cold northerly winds actually, so we just need to keep a rather close eye on that. But it looks like it's mainly going to miss us and pass away to our east and north. We get to day 10, which today is Friday the 29th of March. So we're under a ridge of high pressure then, particularly for England and Wales, although pressure's just starting to weaken again across the northern parts of Scotland. As we go to a more extended range, well, we have a go at turning a bit more unsettled there on the last day of March, but it doesn't really come to much. Actually, high pressure is still quite dominant, even as we go up towards the very end of a GFS run, which today is going to be Thursday, the 4th of April. Still more or less under high pressure in the south, but a little bit more unsettled up to the north. The parallel GFS run looks like this. So, again, we got that cold front bringing rain to the north and west on Friday over the weekend. We really keep high pressure in control, but its position does change a little bit and some cooler air starts to move in from the north. Through the course of next week, high pressure builds back in across the country, so lots of dry and settled spring-like weather through the course of next week. That takes us up to day 10. That's how we look on day 10, Friday 29th of March, with high pressure still ridging across the south. But in the north, it is turning a bit more unsettled on the parallel GFS run. So by the 29th of March, wet and windy weather is starting to arrive in the north and west. But for England and Wales, we're still under that ridge of high pressure. More extended range with a parallel GFS run, we start to pull that high pressure out in the middle of the Atlantic and bring down some colder, more showery winds from the north and from the northwest. So it turns rather unsettled with a parallel GFS and rather cool in the extended range too. That's how we finish up on Thursday the 4th of March, looking pretty chilly, quite cold for the north, maybe cold enough for wintry showers, and quite unsettled as well, I would have thought, with showers or longer spells of rain, and probably cold enough for snow up in the north. The ECMWF is looking like that. So again, we've got the ridge across the south on Friday, keeping it mainly dry, quite warm, cloud and rain to the north and the west. Over the weekend, the high pressure pulls out to our west. We allow down that cold front that lowers the temperature, but still with high pressure in control, so there will be a lot of dry weather on offer over the weekend. There's that northerly early next week. We're closer to that with the ECM. The high pressure, you'll notice, is centred to the west of Ireland here, so we are actually tapping into that, some of those cold northerly winds early next week with the ECM. Mainly they're passing just to our east, they're passing through Scandinavia and then down into Germany. But we are closer, certainly, to those northerly winds early next week with the ECM compared to the GFS. So we might get some sort of brush against us. Might see those cold northern winds just sort of brushing against us through the early part of next week, particularly for eastern parts of the country. Then the high pressure builds back in through the middle of next week, cuts off those northerly winds. And so temperatures will be lifting up, going to more spring-like levels through the second half of next week. That's how we look at day 10, which is Friday 29th of March. And again, we've got the ridge just to our south and east. So we're still more or less under high pressure, but it's trying to go a bit more unsettled again out to the north and west. There's a lot of high pressure on offer in the next week to 10 days, but it may not be completely settled. And these are the options that are on the table within the ECM ensembles today via the postage stamps at the Icelandic Met Office. This is for day 10, which of course 240 hours away, the 29th of March. We've got 16 members of the ECM ensembles with high pressure sitting over and to the east of the country. Low pressure is out to the west. So of course they're going to be mainly dry and settled, bringing the wind up from probably a southerly, southeasterly type direction. So it should be pretty mild. Then there's another 11 with high pressure just a little bit more centred towards Scandinavia, so they're a bit more easterly. They might be a cooler option, but still high pressure is in control, so still mainly dry. Then there's 8 with the high pressure out to the west of us. Low pressure is up to the north, and we're bringing in more of a westerly flow with those. But again, we're still under that ridge of high pressure, so a lot of dry weather on offer with that one. We've got 8 that are a little bit more unsettled. 8 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure out to west of us. They're bringing in a westerly flow and probably showers along with spells of rain. 5, including the operational and the control ECM run. The operational run is the run that I just looked at, of course, that have high pressure over Scandinavia, and they're bringing in easterly winds, so they're a dry but a little bit colder option. And then there's 3 that have high pressure to our south, low pressure is up to the north, and we're bringing in westerlies with those, and particularly for northern parts of Scotland, it's a little bit more unsettled. So there's a few options on the table for day 10. Most of them involve high pressure in control, and it's just differing with option to option about where that high pressure is sitting. But there's actually very few members of the ECM ensembles, only 8 really, these ones just here, that are genuinely unsettled at day 10. The rest of them are just differing in places of high pressure. In 2 weeks' time, though, this is for the start of April, 3rd of April, it's a very different story. There's sort of 2 main options that are on the table. There's 29 members of the ECM ensembles that have low pressure just out to the west of us. So these are unsettled, of course, but mild, bringing in southerly winds, but with showers or longer spells of rain. And then there's 22 that are very unsettled, deep low pressure up to the north of Scotland and bringing in quite a strong westerly flow. So it does look as though by the time we get through to the start of April, there is still the idea of a pattern change at work here to something a good deal more unsettled, at least within the ECM ensembles. Finally, the CFS V2 for the next month. These are 500 millibar heights. They're broken down into weekly periods. The first weekly period will take us from the 19th to the 25th of March. The coming week has above average heights, centre very close to the country. Below average heights are up to the north, the jet streams going up there too. So lots of dry and pretty mild weather in the week ahead, dominated by high pressure. This goes on into week 2. This is the 26th of March to the 1st of April, with high pressure then across Central Europe. Low pressure is up towards Greenland and Iceland. The flow and the jets doing something like that, so lots of dry and pretty mild, if not quite warm weather to the very end of March. Not much sign of a change up to week 2 with the CFS. Week 3 looks like this. And it does show below average heights coming closer to us in the Atlantic. There's some low pressure out in the Atlantic, above average heights to our east. So we're still very close to high pressure, but maybe just a little bit more unsettled there in that week, the 2nd to the 8th of April. It's possibly just a little bit more unsettled, especially for northern western parts of the country. However, by week 4, look at this, it's the 9th to the 15th of April, and we're back to high pressure again. High pressure well and truly in control, bringing up these very mild, if not warm, southerly to southeasterly winds. So CFS is going to town with high pressure in the next 4 weeks. Does go a little bit more unsettled briefly for early April, but overall wants high pressure to be dominant. However, the shorter range output does appear to be rather more unsettled for the early part of April. So I think we have to wait and see about this early April period. It's posing a few questions, and we'll be that surprised if it did go a little bit more unsettled through the early part of April. But how long that would last for before we get ourselves back to high pressure, I think that's open to a lot of questions. Right, that's brought you up to date with all of the latest developments. We'll be back tomorrow with another week to 10-day video update, 5-day forecast as well tomorrow, so come back for that. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.